Good evening, everybody. Here in India, it is 7 o'clock. In the Americas, it's just in the morning. And we have our very, very, very dear, unfortunately, ex-resident teacher here with us today. Many of you know her, of course, still. Venerable Drolma, who is in Chicago. And there it's just starting, right? The day is just waking up. Thank you so much for joining us today again. Venerable Dromala, is such a pleasure to have you back. And wherever you are, I think oh yeah, I see Annette in Europe. It's probably just around late lunchtime, right? So welcome to where are we? On the fourth day of the Days of Miracles. So please enjoy. So Venerable Droma comes from the US and has a background in mental health sector,
Field.
that field. I got instructed how to say it. And then did an amazing program at our sister, is it a center or sister university, right? Maitripa in Portland, yeah, where Yangtze Rinpoche is teaching, right? And then we were so fortunate. And then, of course, went to Vajrapani for a few years to be the SPC there, the spiritual program coordinator. And we were so fortunate to have her with us for 6 years, I think. Venerable Dromala, yeah. And basically, Tushita is still alive because of Venerable Dromala kind of moving us through the pandemic. Honestly, yeah, if she hadn't been here doing all these courses, I think we might not be existing anymore. So we owe you so much, and thank you so much for joining us again. Thank you so much.
It was, you're welcome. It was a team effort. It definitely was. All of us pulling together for the pandemic. So hello everyone. Welcome. Um, I have to admit I'm a little bit rusty because I haven't been teaching. I've been caregiving here in the States. So please bear with me if things are a little choppy. Let's start as usual with our motivation. So, what brings us here? Why do we even engage with this topic of Buddhism? Um, so many people in the world these days have to be concerned with the feeling things of this life, the worldly affairs of this life. We can get so caught up in them. And so it takes effort to move away from that for a little while and just think about something higher, something more hidden, something less obvious, something that takes effort, takes energy. So when we do that, it's really helpful to direct that effort in for a certain purpose because then it stays longer, and it's more just more effective. You know where you're going, then you'll get there. If you don't know where you're going, you'll get nowhere, right? So let's take a few moments to just stop and think about that. Where am I going? Why am I doing this? What is the benefit? I recently heard a quote from Thich Nhat Hanh, who was talking about, he's a Vietnamese teacher in the Zen tradition. And what was quoted to me was that there is when the Vietnamese would be escaping from Vietnam in boats, and they'd have a whole boat full of people. And if they encountered pirates or storms, and if there was one person in the boat who was calm, who was steady, uh, who didn't get panicked, that the whole boat was able to stay calm and deal with the situation and more likely survive. And so I feel like that's one of the things that we can bring to the world. We can't necessarily change the big events that are happening. We can't necessarily directly affect um, politics and uh, natural disasters and climate change, that these things are forces that are really huge, but doesn't mean that we can't do nothing, that we can just ignore them or turn away. We can be present with those difficulties and be calm, be clear, have a have a mind that is present and strong within all of that. And then that communicates itself automatically. They've done research. There's a place near Vajrapani called Heart Math that researches people's heart rates, heart rate variability, how fast, how slow, how quickly it changes. And they've shown that someone who walks into a room with a lot of anxious people who is calm without even talking to them, without even necessarily seeing them or them seeing the person, they can calm the room. Everybody's heart rate goes down if their heart rate is slower. So I feel like that's powerful to remember, when we can feel so helpless at this time. I think that's really powerful to remember. So again, let's spend a little bit of time doing some calming meditation. So for most people, focusing on the breath, getting that concentration can help us calm. For some people, it's just simply body sensations. For some people, it's a mantra silently. Whatever it may be for you, let's spend a couple of minutes just relaxing and calming and going inside. So one of the things about that calm mind, that state of mind that we experience when we practice meditation, is that it not only has an effect on others, but it can help us to become more aware of what mental states are happening, what's happening in our minds. Uh, the most challenging thing about irritation Anger is when it gets out of control, when we when we aren't aware of it, we don't know it's coming, we don't know it's rising, or it rises so fast that it gets out of control very quickly. And so practicing calming meditation is like one of the first frontline defenses to acting out of irritation. So just to put it a little bit in context, why don't we want to act out of irritation or act out of anger? Is because for one thing, it ends up hurting others around us, because that's a lot about what anger is about, is this aversion, this discomfort, this unhappiness with whatever person or situation or suffering, whatever is happening. And then this urge to want to hurt it in order to make it go away. We think oftentimes that by lashing out, by using force, power against whatever it is whether it's ourselves or others, that we can somehow change the situation, that will make it go away, make it stop. And that's hurting others. And that destroys relationships. It makes us feel guilty, even more guilty and bad about ourselves. If we're doing it to ourselves, it makes us feel bad. Which then from that perspective, from that point of view, from that starting point, how can we do anything? How can we make things better at all if we just feel bad about ourselves? We just feel discouraged. It pushes our energy down. It pushes our sense of effort, of ability, of motivation, of inspiration. It just pushes it down and doesn't help anyone. It creates sickness. Yeah, it just creates a bad mood. We go right back into whatever our negative coping strategies are, whether it's addictions or self-harm, or it's not productive. It's not helpful. It's not enjoyable. It just hurts. It's sad. Ah, so difficult. Anger, irritation. Um, and then other people, when we're constantly irritated by other people, we end up cutting ourselves off from them. We don't have connections with others because we're pushing them away. Um, Being a caregiver, living with someone, I lived alone for a very long time. And now living with someone, it's harder. I mean, luckily we have a lot of space, so it helps, but there's definitely that irritation that comes up. I was getting teachings yesterday with Geshe Namdak, and Venerable Kunpen may have heard this one, but Venerable Namdak was talking about Lama Zopa, talking about a cup. You want the cup to be here. Your roommate, this other person, your family member, wants the cup to be over here, right? And so you put the cup here, and they put the cup here, and you put the cup here, and that irritation arises. And it's just so simple. It's just where a cup is. It's so unimportant. When we can start to see our opinions, our attitudes, uh our what we're committed to. I'm so about systems. um how the laundry is done, how, or my brother too, how the dishwasher is loaded, uh when we eat, how we eat, all these things that you share space with others. um and we get so attached to those ways of doing things, or ways things are supposed to be, or attitudes about the world. And then we grasp onto those, we attach to those. And when someone challenges them, when they're different from us, then that irritation arises. Um, yeah, and that's just a little part of it. So anger, of course, we all know the negative aspects of losing control, when we yell, or when we strike out, or that those kinds of things. But irritation is still anger, but it's on this lower level. And sometimes we don't express it directly. but it certainly disturbs our mind. It hurts us to be irritated with others, cuts us off from connection. And connection, being with others, relating to others, is what takes us out of loneliness. And loneliness is one of a big problem. It's another one of the difficulties that we have in the world is loneliness. Even if you live in a big city where there are all these people around, or you have all these family members that you live with, if you don't feel connected to them, you don't feel loved, you don't feel like you share things, you don't have happy moments with them, then there's that isolation, that loneliness. And we can get into that too when, that sense of self that feels disconnected. That's a little bit even more subtle level. So just recognizing that irritation, if we are often irritated, it's usually because we're attached to something. We're attached to our way of doing things. We're attached to how we think the world should be. We're attached to a certain, like, say we discover some great thing, we're um, really happy that we figured this out, and it brings us pleasure. It's like, yeah, this is the way to do it. This is smooth. This is nice. Things are nice when they're neat and clean. Things are nice when we have good food. Things are nice when we go, to this movie, or when we go shopping together, when we have family time. This is nice. And then we get teenagers who don't want anything to do with us, especially the teenagers who fight. The girls usually fight, the boys disappear. And now where's my family? Where's my family time? That we get attached to the way things are supposed to be. And then when it doesn't happen, we get irritated. We're like, you know, th- that was my pleasure. That where did that go? That where did that go? So attachment to something is how anger often arises. Not getting what we want, getting what we don't want, and losing what we want. Those are the one of the three of the big sufferings that cause that irritation and that anger. And hang in there, because I will get to antidotes. I will get to dealing with this, but I feel like we have to go into it. We have to be present with what our anger is, where it's coming from, in order to move through it, in order to move beyond it. And attachment is a big part of that. What am I attached to? For a long time, I had a lot of difficulty identifying what do you mean attachment? Because we're in this desire realm, and they call it desire realm for a reason. It's desire realm because we automatically want, and we think that wanting things is what will make us happy. That if we get something, that's pleasure, that's happiness. And that's the whole, we're like built that way. The senses are all about having pleasant senses, like pleasurable sensations. And we're so immersed in this body, that's where we think our pleasure lies, is in the senses. And of course, Buddhism talks differently. It says, no, no, it's not really about the senses having pleasurable feelings. It's about how the mind reacts to those sensations, to those objects that we contact, whether they're sights or smells or sounds or tastes or touches, sensations. How do we react to those? Do we judge them as, okay, this negative sensation has arisen and I don't like it and I don't want it, and now I'm going to push it away? Difficult. And of course, it's present often, because our attachment is present, because we have attachment, anger will arise. irritation will arise. So then how do we work with that mind? So there's a famous quote by Shantideva from the Bodhisattva's Way of Life, which is a text that the Dalai Lama, His Holiness, teaches often. And he really, I guess, um, recently, I heard a teaching once that said that it's not one of the texts that's taught traditionally in the monastic system in Tibet, but His Holiness kind of it's always been there, and but it wasn't quite as popular until he started saying, look how great this text is. And Shantideva only has like two major texts that he wrote, I think, that we even have of his. And so this one has a really great chapter on anger. And so a lot of what I teach comes from this chapter. And one of it's chapter 6, I think. I'm pretty sure it's chapter 6. Please chime in if I'm wrong. So one of the quotes talks about how to deal with these difficulties in the world. And it says, how could I ever find, thank you, chapter 6 on patience. How could I ever find enough leather to cover the earth? So what he's talking about is how could I ever protect my whole world to keep myself from being angry, to keep myself from being irritated, to keep myself from ever experiencing unpleasantness? How could I ever find enough ways and energy to fix everything out there? But if I just cover with leather my feet, if I just protect my feet, it's as if I have covered the whole world. It's as if I have protected myself from the whole world. So if we work with our minds, if we are willing to put the effort in to start to shift how we react, how we respond to difficulties, to challenges, to irritants, then it's as if we have taken care of the whole world. We have covered everything, right? One of my best lessons, especially here, I drive a lot now. I didn't drive. It was so great in India. I didn't drive for 6 years. It was wonderful. Now I'm in the US. There's not even buses in my town. It's embarrassing. There are no buses in our town. They don't allow them. It's like ridiculous. You have to like walk a mile to get a bus. Anyway, um, driving. Okay, so you're on highways. We have a lot of highways in Chicago, right? People drive very fast. Um, and it's relatively safe, but it's a little scary. But anyway, you want people to drive in a certain way. You want them to follow the rules. And of course, this in India, this doesn't apply because nobody follows the rules. They just kind of get where they're going, but they also drive a lot slower, which I think is great. You can't really drive super fast. Some of the highways, I guess in Delhi you could, but not much, right? Because you never can know when someone's going to just do whatever. So anyway, you want them to do a certain thing so driving becomes this great lesson. Someone cuts you off, how are you going to respond? Someone is weaving in and out of traffic really fast and it scares you. How are you going to respond? Right? Someone stops really fast in front of you. Someone tailgates you right behind you. How are you going to respond? Are you going to let it irritate you because you want them to be a certain way? You want them to drive exactly the way that makes you safe, makes you happy? Instead, you create this space in your mind that is calm, that is happy, that is loving. I'm embarrassed to say I used to, when someone would do something that I didn't like that scared me on the road, I would say, they're going to get into an accident, right? And I thought, oh, it was almost wishing that they would. It was like this, it's horrible. I stopped doing that. I was like, oh my. And I would think it was like kind of like hovered over with concern. Don't drive, so fast. You're gonna get in an accident. Yet that, you know, so now it's much more, that's the way it is, right? Much more acceptance, much more equanimity. Okay. So that's my my way of dealing with irritants, one of them. Okay. So working with the mind. The mind, so then it becomes stronger. Slowly, slowly, the more that we develop patience, relaxation, loving kindness, letting go, the more the mind is relaxed, happy, and the easier it becomes for all those difficulties, even when they're really strong difficulties, then we can still respond in a positive way. Even when someone, I mean, slowly, slowly, like the bodhisattvas, we can deal with a lot of really, really difficult things. So there's a book, and both my sisters are reading it. And uh it's like on the top 10 New York Times bestseller list, which is a big thing in the US. A lot of people, millions of people reading this book, and it's psychology and it's self-help, and it's called Let Them. So it's a let them theory. And it cracks me up because Buddhists have been talking about let them and let me for, 2,500 years. But it's good. I mean, it's nice to bring it into modern culture. And I think that um, yeah, a very positive trend that people are learning to let go of other people's behavior and recognizing that what we can change is ourselves. Now, the other aspect that she talks about, it's Mel Robbins is the name of the author. She talks about let me. And this is also not that we do nothing, right? It is a recognition that we cannot change anyone. There is no way directly to change anyone. And even nagging, it backfires, right? People become irritated even more. They don't want to change. They become more entrenched in their ways. So let me is more about nonviolent communication, which is another system that came up in, I don't know, the last 10 years or 15 years, maybe, which allows us to ask nicely for people to change, to state our ways, our point of view, understand their point of view, express our feelings calmly, listen to them calmly, and then make a request. Please put the dishes in the dishwasher, right? Please come with us on this outing, right? But then if the person doesn't agree, letting them let go. It's okay. It's fine. I understand your point of view, but you can still make a request. It's not that we do nothing, right? And protests are requests. They're, nonviolent protests are requests for our government, for the people in power to change. Okay, so let them let me. I thought that was really great that that's happening in the world, that book is a bestseller. So back to the mind becoming stronger, the mind becoming more used to, more habituated to letting go, to being patient, to tolerating, to responding in a certain way to more and more difficult things. So the more we can do this, the more the mind becomes stronger. And then, because it's helping us train our mind, because those difficult people, those irritating situations are training our minds, we start to even want them. So Lama Zopa used to say, my problems are like ice cream, meaning they're great. If you like ice cream, of course, chocolate, you could use chocolate too. Lama Yeshe was big about chocolate. Problems are like chocolate. You want them. I want chocolate, right? Chocolate tastes good. I want problems because it's going to help me be stronger. It's going to help me train my mind. If I don't have challenging people, if I don't have challenging situations, then I'm going to become soft. I'm not going to become a bodhisattva who can deal with any situation, who can go to the difficult places and still remain calm and loving and kind and be beneficial for others. I want those so that I can train my mind. So then those irritating situations, we go into them with enthusiasm. We go into them with a desire to train ourselves, to test ourselves. So coming from an amusement park recently, there are some really scary rides. We didn't do any of the scary rides. My mother's 90. We went on the easy rides. Uh, mostly. There was some drops, some thrills. But anyway, my brother-in-law, he would go on these crazy, like rides that just like scare the crap out of you. And he would do it to test himself, right? To make his mind stronger. And so that's what we're doing. And that's one of the things we want to think about when we have these difficulties that arise, when we have, really crazy drivers, or we have really challenging, people in our lives, people who treat us badly, who insult us or call us names or um, never recognize us for the work that we're doing. Um, who make decisions that affect our lives that are just totally not in line with our values. How do we how do we relate to them? What ways do we think about them? And one way we can think about them is that they're benefiting us. They're actually helping us have stronger minds. And that's pretty challenging to look at the world that way, to not automatically go, get away from me and stop acting that way. And I wish you weren't here, right? Because that's usually how we respond. Instead, it's like, okay, now I'm going to learn to be calm with you. I'm going to learn to be loving with you. Going to learn to be patient with you. So, what is patience? Patience is being calm, being content, being relaxed in the face of difficulty. When we are confronted with really, really difficult situations, we're calm, we're relaxed, we're happy. And the most powerful protective kind of mental factor, you could say, you could call it, I'm in mind and mental factor studying that. The most powerful state of mind, way of thinking, way of being that we can be that will protect us when those sufferings arise, when we lose someone that we love, when someone hurts us in a really strong way, when we're having to deal with huge losses. The most protective factor is already being calm. Like in those times when it's not difficult, we practice love. We practice loving kindness, thinking about how this person makes me happy and I want them to be happy. Thinking about uh, doing our concentration meditation, our relaxation meditation, counting our breaths, even short amounts of time. It's becoming more and more a part of mental health, fitness, health in general, to spend 15 minutes concentrating on your breath, relaxing, because it's a protective factor for so much difficulty and stress. Okay. So remaining calm, you have to know what calm is first, right? We have to have a familiarity with some calm when we aren't being challenged in order to be able to be calm when we are. So that's what patience is. Another aspect of patience is equanimity. And it brings me back to that let them sort of attitude. So equanimity is an even state of mind. And what I'm learning is from this Buddhist perspective, the way that the mind reacts whenever it encounters an object, there's always um, mental factors that are always present whenever we have an idea, see a person, see a chair, or in a situation, whatever, whenever we encounter any object, which is always because we're always thinking whether it's conceptual or non-conceptual, that we have a feeling. And that feeling is either one of three: positive, negative, neutral. So feelings are not necessarily emotions. Emotions are more complex than feelings. Emotions have a physical response, whether it's stomach, heart, um, shoulders, neck, right? They have a physical response as well as a mental ideas. We talk to ourselves, we say things to ourselves. When anger gets really strong, I'm still on equanimity. When anger gets really strong, uh, we feel it, right? In our stomach, in our wherever, we feel it. Uh, Hands might get strong. Sometimes people, especially if anger is out of hurt, someone has hurt me and I'm so angry they hurt me, we can cry. We can get headaches, right? Of course, neck and shoulders. This is a little bit more complex than the first response to an object, which is just a simple feeling. I like it, I don't like it, I don't care, right? Positive, negative, neutral. And that initial positive, negative, neutral comes up with every single experience we have. And so then once that has arisen, what do we do with it? And that's where equanimity comes in. Equanimity is a sort of the next mental factor that we can generate, where even if it's something that is pleasurable, we don't exaggerate it. We don't add to it. We don't think it's going to last. We see its impermanence. Or if it's negative, again, we don't exaggerate it. We don't add to it and say, oh, it's so awful. It's so horrible. Never going to change. Again, impermanence. We can be present with it, with whatever the feeling is arising, and not elaborate on it, not add to it, because our mind has a tendency to then take the next step and want it more or not want it more. Okay. It's like yeah, it's just a tendency, a habit that we have. So, one of the things my teacher talks about in terms of attachment, Yang Rinpoche, he he talks about sometimes we can get this grasping mind, you know. So I went to Disney World last week with my 90-year-old mom, and my sister. Luckily, there were three of us. And that's like the peak of samsara. It's like all about pleasure. There's these stores of all these t-shirts and, all the clothing you could imagine, hats and stuff. And then there's the sensations, the rides, the fireworks, there's all this food, all different kinds of food with the themes with the movies, like there's, it just- it's amazing. Um, yeah, just amazing what they've done. They create an experience that is totally sensory, right? Um, and it's there to make you feel good, and they try to mitigate all the standing in lines as much as possible. They try to decrease the negative aspects of it as much as possible. And then you get these thrills, right? These really exciting things. And so your attachment builds and builds and builds, and you can just see all the people around you, just their grasping minds. And that's what my teacher talks about, his grasping mind, this mind that becomes so disturbed by wanting things. And that's what a desire mind is. It's disturbing because contentment, peace, um, being happy with where you are and what you have, that's comfortable. That's, relaxing. This grasping mind is not. So, how do we enjoy things, have pleasure from the senses without it turning into that grasping mind? And that's what that equanimity is about. Enjoying and not adding to it, not, making it bigger. And then if it's not bigger, when it goes, when it's, when you get the pain, right? When the you can't, you have to stand in line, or the kid in line is so annoying, or something like that, then you just don't react in the same way. You don't develop the anger. You don't develop the irritation. It's like it came, it was nice, it's gone. This isn't so nice, it'll go. It's like this, yeah, this even, and it's not indifference, because we do want to enjoy our lives, right? I enjoyed that, the water slide. Um, they were fun. I enjoyed being with my family, right? I enjoy company. I enjoyed, there was some really good food. But then when it's gone, when the vacation is over, right? That's fine. It was fun, whatever. Just this grasping at it, and oh, it's over. Or I went to a wake yesterday, which is, a funeral, and lovely, lovely man, friend of my mom's that I knew when I was a kid. And I was sitting there doing some mantras quietly, of course, because it's all Christian and Catholic, around my house. And one of the things I've learned about losing people is that what we mourn is the future good times we could have had with them. The future, because that's what missing someone is about, is that now in the future, I'm not going to be able to be with them. Um, and yeah, interesting. So letting go of that person, which is so, from a Buddhist perspective, so important. When someone passes away, it's really important that we let them go on to their next wonderful life, to their next precious human life, or into the or the pure lands, to continue to grow. And this was a very, very virtuous man. I mean, really, really precious man. And so I wanted that for him. And yeah, I don't know where I was going with that. I just remember thinking about how grasping at someone staying is not really good for them, wishing them well in their future lives. And for many of these people, helping them to be reunited with their loved ones in heaven. and wanting their future to go. Because when we grasp, when we hold on to people, it's not really good for the people who have passed. So that grasping mind, developing equanimity instead, and we can still celebrate their lives. And there was a lot of that going on, people talking about, oh, when he was this way and he was that way, and we can celebrate that. But at the same time, letting go, I think, is really important. So having a loving mind, developing loving kindness for others is very important so that irritation doesn't arise. Um, Developing a calm mind, being patient, so that when difficulties and suffering arise, we don't get irritated with it. Recognizing impermanence, so that we don't become attached to things staying the same way, so that when they change, we can just let them go, and that's fine. Uh, yeah, patience. And in general, having a happy, relaxed mind. Um, in in situations like with shopkeepers, in service situations, when we're getting the car fixed, or when we're being waited on, or when we have to pay for something, the more we can be relaxed and happy, the less irritated we're going to get if things don't go our way, if stuff comes up, because of course it's going to come up, because that's what karma is, isn't it? Karma is one aspect of karma, let's put it that way. One aspect of karma is that we are going to experience the results of past actions, and we can't control that. Those things are going to arise because in the past, the situations, the causes were created for us to, let's say, get sick. You know, and it can sometimes be the people around us, who also have germs. But part of it is also our our part, right? And remember, with karma, it's not the reason why we emphasize our part is so that we can be aware of the causes we're creating for the future. But if we put it all on ourselves, like it's my karma to get sick, then there's no real power there. There's nothing I can do. Everything is my past, and I'm stuck. That's that determinism, right? That it's out of lack of free will. I have no free will. It's all determined by my karma. I got sick. There's nothing I can do, right? But yet there is, right? We can do things for the future that are going to prevent us from experiencing it again. And when we have the difficult situation that arises, that's when it's most powerful that we can let this situation finish, let this karmic situation be done, and not create the conditions to experience it again in the future. So if I have experience where I have someone who's, let's say, waiting on me, who is rude and unhelpful and, putting obstacles in my way of me getting what I want, right? And I become irritated, and I have negative thoughts about that person, and maybe I'm a little brusque about them. Maybe I'm not generous in some way. All that reaction has just created the conditions for me to again experience a difficult person when I'm being waited on in the future, right? um it's this recognition that, not am I like, oh, it's, there. First of all, I'm not blaming that person completely, because it isn't all their fault, right? If I didn't create the conditions to experience a difficult person in my life, then that difficult person would not be difficult for me, right? They would not even be there, most likely, or they would act in a different way, or I would not react in the same way, right? All of that's present in me. But what do I do in this moment when I'm experiencing that? And I have found that I've spent years being nice to people ever since I was a cashier in a grocery store. I've spent years being kind to others who wait on me. I mean, I am consciously that way, no matter who it is, whether it's at the government offices, bureaucracy, doesn't matter. I am kind to people who serve me. And as a result, people in general are very kind to me. I have just created those conditions to where more likely, not always, because I of course have had people who are not, right? But most of the time, and so then when someone shows up who's difficult, I'm less likely to get irritated and rude and say something mean and, be rude to them right back. Um, so that this is our karmic situation. So recognizing that this is my karma, that it's not all the other person to blame, can really help in in allowing us to develop that equanimity, develop that patience, to recognize that. And this was a real insight for me. We had, when I was at Vajrapani, we had a teacher who was really just difficult, just, picky and complaining, and we could never do anything right. And it just sort of, it hit me. Well, it's my karma to have this person, I created the causes for this person to act in this way toward me. If I didn't create the causes, that wouldn't be happening. And that doesn't mean that that person's behavior was okay in any way, or that I'm completely responsible for that person's actions, because they have their part in it too. Recently, Geshe Namdak used this great analogy for karmic situations, that when we have an experience in a moment, it's like a jigsaw puzzle. All the pieces have fit together for that experience to happen. And it doesn't mean that I'm responsible for the weather. Maybe that person who was upset was, upset because they were cold, because it's a really cold winter or something. And that did, contributed to their irritation, right? I can't control the weather. I can't control their response. It's not my fault that they have that response. But I would not have encountered that if I didn't create the causes, if I didn't act in that way toward someone else in the past at some point. So karma is so complex. We had to be really, really careful about blaming ourselves for our karmic situation. Why we even bring the self, me, into the picture of a difficult situation, of a suffering situation, is so that we can know that we have the possibility to, going forward, create positive results, create the causes for positive results. Sometimes people, when they talk about attachment, and this is something that just came clear to me recently, um, attachment for positive things like enlightenment, like benefiting others, like having a calm mind, attachment to those things is not attachment, because it's not a contaminated object. It's aspiration, aspiration for virtue, for positive things in our lives. And I just wanted to bring that in, so in case people think that when I have uh when I want my life to be better in the future, so that I can be a better Dharma practitioner, so that I can be that person in the boat who is calm. When I want that strong want, that's aspiration. That's not a grasping mind. Okay. That's a positive thing, because also we recognize the impermanence of it, because that's part of virtue, and so forth. It's a different perspective. It's really interesting. It's a different perspective. Okay. So that's my little segue into karma. Now I want to come back to, and we'll have time for questions. So I'm hoping you're thinking questions already. Um, this sense of more aspects of um antidotes, ways to deal with when those feelings come up, when those difficult feelings come up, because we can often, especially if there are repeated situations where we're irritated a lot with the same person or the same situation, is that we can start to grow that anger, that irritation with the way we think about it. And we become in a habit. I was noticing the other day that when I get tired, I tend to get irritated more easily, which is obvious, right? But I also automatically blame my family member and get irritated with them automatically. It's like as soon as I'm tired, I'm irritated with this person. It's like they start to go together. And I recognized that and was like, wow, that's, I don't want that, right? It's an uncomfortable state of mind. It's rude, it's not kind to my mother. And so recognizing I'm tired, right? So what am I going to do about that? Okay, I'm going to go rest, right? Instead of being irritated with someone who yeah, doesn't deserve it. Okay, they're not doing anything but being themselves. Okay, so how do we look at the situation? How do we use our discriminating wisdom? How do we start to see that what is actually happening is that there's a me here, right? And there's a situation over there, and how do they relate? How separate are they really? Anger and attachment have this root that is ignorance. And the ignorance that is the root is this sense of a me that is solid, concrete, sometimes the controller, the one who can run things, who's in charge, right? There's someone in here who is in charge of me. And that being has to be protected. That's the one that needs to get pleasure from outside. That's the one that needs to be protected from those negative experiences. And when we start to look for who that me is, we can't really find a me in there. I mean, there's a body and we can outline it, like these days they have those in photos, you can outline just the person so you can change their background. That's what we do. We outline ourselves by our skin, right? We separate even our minds, of course, are separate from other people's minds, because if not, then we're mentally ill, right? So we have to create a boundary, okay? But what we do is we solidify that boundary because, in fact, my skin is oh, I can't remember. It's breathing, right? I'm breathing. In order to stay alive, I'm constantly interacting with my environment, right? I am not separate. Even though I create a boundary of my skin and then solidify it, it doesn't really exist that way because I eat, right? I breathe. I You sweat, right? I absorb things on my skin. Uh, I eliminate stuff. I am constantly interacting with my environment. So this boundary of my skin, which is changing all the time anyway, I mean, my skin is very different from what it was when I was a child. Where's that solid body? That self, that me. I look so much different from when I was 5. How can you say there's that solid, absolute me that is my body? So then we put a boundary around our mind and we say, this is my mind. But our mind is constantly interacting, our ideas. Where do we get our ideas? We get them from books, we get them from talking to others. We get them from experiencing, observing others. Um, our mind, I read a recent book called The Extended Mind, which talks about why it's so great to use external things to support your thinking. We typically think that intelligence is all, here, like inside me. Like if I can do like being able to figure, add and subtract and so forth in my mind without using a calculator is somehow superior. And in this book, they were saying, no, these days it's much better. You use computers, you offload information onto computers. You don't have to hold it on because if you hold on to it, it gets all messed up, right? And there's no room for creativity. There's no room for manipulation. So offloading, extending that mind, opening it up, because that's how the mind exists anyway. It's interactive with so many things. And so then where is that self? If my mind is the product of all the interactions I've ever had, all the past karmas, past interactions that I've had that have made my habits that they are now, right? In this moment, I can put a boundary around it and say, this is me. But that's then changed. So where is an actual concrete, solid, long-standing me that somehow needs to push away negative things or bring in positive things in order to be happy? If I am already a interdependent, a part of, one with everything, it doesn't make any sense. But the problem is that we solidify it, we reify it, we make that self absolutely what it is, and then we cut ourselves off. I have to get that thing to be happy. I have to contact that experience. And it's this awareness, it's this understanding that brings that peace, that brings that contentment, that brings that long lasting happiness that is not dependent on external things. That is, yeah. So we're hearing this, right? And it sounds wonderful, I hope. It sounds great to me. I'm saying it sounds great to me. Um, but we forget it so much because that tendency to make the boundaries solid, to make that outline absolute, that our tendency to do that is so strong that it takes effort, it takes practice, and it takes time to overcome that, to break out of those boundaries and to balance when we have to have boundaries and when we can release them. It's a lightness. Um, Lama Zopa would say things exist, but they don't. So it's like, yeah, it's a lightness, it's emptiness, it's beyond words. Um, but we can start to experience that. We can start to, with reasoning, slowly, slowly, over and over again, bringing the mind to an understanding that this is how we actually exist. And then equanimity becomes easier, patience becomes easier, loving kindness becomes easier, compassion becomes stronger. All because we recognize that that self, it's a temporary boundary that we have placed that is necessary for us to function and interact in the world. Who's going to get enlightened? It's me, right? But at the same time, letting go, releasing it over and over again, keeping it, releasing it, keeping it, releasing it. Yeah, it's when we contract that it creates a lot of problems. Rob Priest, another one of my teachers, Feeling Wisdom, he wrote a great book called Feeling Wisdom. And he talked a lot about how we contract, and that's that reification, that's that solidifying. Okay. So release, let go, let them. So let's try to do questions for a little while, and then if we run out of questions, we'll do a meditation. How does that sound, Venerable? You're muted.
Amiji has a question. Sounds wonderful. Thank you so much, Venerable
Mm.
Drolma. You're not rusty, you say? At all.
Yeah,
It's flowing, it's flowing.
good.
Amiji has a question.
Yeah.
Welcome back,
Hi,
Amiji.
Venerable. Thank you so much for
Hello,
inviting me
Amit.
today. How are you?
Nice to see you. I'm good. How are you?
Good, good. I'm doing good as well. Thank you. Um, we you were talking about what we go through is caused by a karma in a previous life or this life. Is there a way to change that karma faster just by myself without interacting with the people involved if relationships are causing this?
Hmm.
Any prayers, any meditation where,
Yeah.
it could be my attachment to the desired outcome, but is it something that I can cleanse just by myself? Is there
Hmm.
a possibility
Hmm.
that Buddhism tell us how to quote unquote fast forward the suffering and get to the desired outcome
Yeah.
sooner rather than going through the
Yeah.
grind?
Uh, I have a couple different answers. One is that purification. Um, Vajrasattva practice is a purification, and that comes from the four opponent powers. So recognizing that my part in experiencing this situation, I regret it. I regret whatever I did in the past that allowed me to experience this now. Okay. So I wish I hadn't done it. So that's regret. Um, the second one is also both of these are really powerful. The resolve to not do it again. So if someone is uncooperative, rude, challenging, I go overboard to not do that at all in my life. Strongly with others, I am as cooperative as possible, right?
So, so
Because
not
that
do, so not doing what
go
the other person is doing to me. I take a resolve not to do what the other person is doing to me, which is hurting me. So I shouldn't do.
yes,
Okay.
right, to others. And you do it a lot. Like you even do it extra because you know that you're experiencing that now because you did it in the past. So you're very careful now not to do it anymore in the future. And then there's taking refuge, which is relying on the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas that they're going to help you, that they're there, they're doing what they can. They can't do it for you, right? They can't pluck you out and change your karma. They aren't all powerful, but they are there to support you. And so they want it for you too. Okay. Especially Vajrasattva wants all that purified. And then the last one is the antidote, and that's like making prayers. And they talk about the Vajrasattva mantra, which you can look up on the FPMT website, and visualization of receiving um, that healing, that purification from the Buddhas. And when you use your visualization, your imagination of the Buddhas freeing you from that situation, you make it even more powerful in your mind to finish that karma, for that imprint not to be present anymore in your consciousness. So that's called the antidote or the remedy. So the regret, resolve not to do it again, take refuge, trust that that they're there for you, they're helping you, and the remedy, imagining it happening, placing that imprint in your mind that it's finished, it's done. Okay.
Yeah. Thank
Good.
you.
Uh-huh.
Sorry, can you just repeat where we can find that link with the prayer?
Sure.
I
It's FPMT education. You can download the practice. Let's see. So it's probably FPMT store. You can look that up.
Venerable Drolma, love, you're working on it. Yeah, we put in
Okay,
it. Yeah.
they'll put the link in the chat.
Yeah. Ishani has a question. Ishani, would you like to unmute yourself?
Yes, thank you so much. Thank you so much for the enlightening session. I have a question about the offloading. When you say that, when computers are available and we can easily, get the information from it, how does it help in, broadening the brain or like, as you said, that the answers are easily available on the computer, then is it better to do that or to just keep activating the brain to isn't it a stimulant to have more power, or is it using up too much space and not leaving enough place to absorb more like
It's a good
inputs?
question. It's a good question. We have so much detail in our lives, so much information available. And a lot of it is, we may need it, but it's not particularly useful. We need it for a little while. So that offloading was not about the important stuff. Okay. The offloading is about the small stuff that like when you make a list of the things you have to get done and you write it down, you can let go of it. And then you can focus on working on your mind. Like right now, I'm going to work on, developing my patience, my loving kindness. I don't have to think about what I'm going to make for dinner or, like that's what I'm talking about, offloading the things that we don't need in the moment. You'll come back to that list later. But right now, it frees up the mind to develop in the ways that you want it to develop. Okay?
Yes, I understand. Thank you so much.
Great. Sure.
SK has a question.
Venerable, thank you for your teachings. Most helpful. I wanted to actually relate to when you mentioned grasping and craving. Just when I was doing a retreat on emptiness as this dependent origination, I have this doubt where, the seventh link is feelings. And that leads to craving, which then leads to grasping and stuff. So I always had a doubt that till in the present life, our contaminated karmas and afflictions, of course, lead us to the feeling. So we have no control till there. So in order to break the chain, when the feelings arise on contact, isn't it a perception which then, identifies the feeling as pleasant, unpleasant, neutral? Only on the basis of a sanya, the perception, do craving, and the rest of the chain arrive. So I always used to wonder why perception is not a link of dependent origination, or whether it's anyway inbuilt into the idea of feeling. So I always thought that all our afflictions, it's our perception based on our memory and earlier experiences that if we just know with wisdom that it's just a feeling, without sanya saying pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. I don't know.
Mhm.
Is that clear? In the sense, I'm confused about the whole link of dependent origin, especially in this part, the seventh and
Yeah. Yeah. So I think what you need to go to is the mind and mental factors teaching that breaks it down better, that between feelings and
craving.
craving. Yeah, between there, you have those five omnipresent mental factors. Whenever you have contact, you have feeling, you have discrimination, you have attention, um,
Intention,
yeah, intention, that was thought. And what's the fifth one?
Sankhara?
No,
No. Mental formation, no. Attention, intention,
attention, intention, feeling,
perception.
discrimination, no, perception. See, so so
Okay.
perception is all of those things at the same time,
Okay.
right? So when I contact anything, I'm automatically at a really basic level going to have a feeling, right? I'm also going to have a discrimination of what it is.
Right.
And so I think that's what you're talking about in terms of perception. Like an apple, I see an apple, I I have an intention to go toward it because I remember that it tastes good. I have a discrimination that it is an apple and I have this positive feeling about it, right? That's my contact. That's all of that. Now, that's the part that we can't control, okay? Comes from past karma, that I recognize that it's an apple and that I have a positive feeling about it. Okay, so that's your perception, right? Then the next moment, if we can, with habituation, the next moment, instead of going for saying, oh, and that's going to make me so happy, that's the craving. Instead, I have a recognition of the impermanence. I bring in the wisdom of the impermanence of the apple or its negative qualities, right? It's maybe it'll hurt my teeth or whatever, right? Um, that then that's where I can stop that craving from happening. That's where I can interrupt that link with the next moment awareness of where am I going to go with. I can bring in a virtuous mental factor of equanimity,
Okay. So at that
not
stage,
letting craving.
okay, at that stage, if I have the wisdom of anicca, dukkha, anatta, that it's impermanent and not self, then either craving or aversion, that step I can miss out with the wisdom.
Yes.
And that's where the link collapses.
Right.
Okay.
Yes. Yes. And now we're really habituated to go right for craving, especially when they're really strong. Thank you. Contact. Oh, contact. Okay. Um, especially when it's really strong, um, it'll go to it automatically, but then we can recognize it as quickly as possible and start to habituate ourselves to responding differently. But at first, it's not gonna, just recognizing it isn't gonna, help. It's got to be like over and over and over again. I did a lot of that at Walt Disney World. I was like, like that, back and forth, and then eventually, yeah, like, people like Lama Zopa, when he was alive, it didn't affect him. It wouldn't affect him. Yeah, in the same way.
Thank you. That was very helpful. Thank you, Annie.
Good. So should we do a short meditation? Yeah? Okay. So I thought we'd do it on attachment. since that's what we're talking a lot about, because attachment often is what stops, what creates anger for us, not getting what we want, getting what we don't want, losing what we have. So go ahead and get into a comfortable position. We can refresh that motivation. I am doing this to free myself, to free others from their afflictions, to bring peace to myself and the world. And then focusing on the breath to make the mind more subtle, to experience relaxation, peace. So we've been talking about attachment and how it arises when we follow pleasant feelings based on sensory perceptions, objects out there. But how they're deceptive, how they are temporary. They don't continue to bring us pleasure. And then we experience disappointment, suffering, the suffering of change. So come up with an example of something that you were recently attached to. How did it deceive you into thinking it was lasting happiness? See if you can remember the process of building up your attachment. How did you exaggerate the positive qualities of that thing that made you more stuck to it, want it more? Think it was better than it actually was. And then consider how it disappointed you, how you became tired of it, or it changed in a way that was no longer pleasurable. And the suffering that caused. And now remember how irritation arose in response to that suffering, when attachment no longer gave you pleasure and turned to suffering. And then notice how that irritation is uncomfortable, how it's unpeaceful and caused by that attachment. And now return to the breath. And experience that calm, peaceful, even pleasurable state of mind that is not disturbed by attachment or anger. And then let's dedicate all the effort we've put into listening, contemplating, meditating today, that it may become the causes for us to continue to develop on our spiritual path. So we can be the one person in the boat during these especially difficult times. And thank you so much for everything, for being here, for giving me the opportunity to teach myself while you were listening. And yeah, continue to generate lots of positive merit during these miraculous days.
Thank you so much, Venerable Drolma. It was so lovely having you with us.
Nice
Again,
to see you again.
at least once a year, hopefully soon, much, much more, whenever your time allows. Thank you so much. Have a wonderful day in Chicago.
I
For
will.
Yes, for the people who are joining us from the Americas, have a wonderful day. In Europe, a good afternoon. And here in India, it's almost time to go to bed. So thank you so much. And tomorrow we have our dear Jitsuma Tenzin Palmo with us. Yeah, it's quite amazing because Jitsuma has finished teaching quite a few years ago now. But she is so generous always to Tushita. So 3 o'clock Indian time. If you still have a question and answer, if you still have some questions, write them to us now because we have to submit the questions tomorrow morning. Yeah, please write them to us and then we look through them and we try to put them in a nice order. Yeah, thank you so much, everybody. Have a good day, good afternoon, good night, and see you hopefully tomorrow. Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.